Humanex Ventures presents Inside the Coaching Mind. Terry Pettit coached the University of Nebraska's first national championship team in 1995 and put the state of Nebraska on a path to volleyball greatness. Now, Terry mentors coaches, writes books, and gives talks about leadership and team building to corporate and business audiences. Here's Coach Pettit to take us inside the coaching mind.
Thank you, David Young. I also want to thank Humanex Ventures, an organization that recruits, develops, and mentors extraordinary talent. And we have 4 extraordinary talents on the show today. And if you are a Nebraska volleyball fan, you are going to love this podcast. We have 3 ladies, 3 of the 4 ladies that I believe were in the best recruiting class I ever had. And they came from totally different environments. One was Greichaly Cepero, who came from Dorado, Puerto Rico. One was Laura Pilakowski, who came from Columbus, Nebraska. And one was Amber Holmquist, who came from Houston, Texas. The 4th one was Lindsay Wishmeier, who's now the director of operations for Nebraska Volleyball. And she played for her dad in Lewiston High School in southeast Nebraska. But these people were thrilling to coach. They were great students. They were highly competitive. They were the type of people that you dreamed about getting together. And the idea that we got all 4 in one class was really extraordinary. John Baylor is joining us today because John saw every match that these 3 ladies played. And John has a vault of every contact of the ball. And so he's here to set us straight and ask some questions to these women. I want to begin with your recruiting process. Laura, you were less dramatic than certainly Amber and Gracia, in that you were at Columbus, Nebraska. I don't know, did you make visits to other schools, or was it pretty much a done deal when we showed interest?
I didn't go on any other visits, but I did camp, so kind of a visit at K-State and Colorado State. So I knew I wanted to stay close to home for sure.
Good. Well, we're certainly glad you didn't go there.
Yeah, me too.
And, Amber, there's so many things that happen by happenstance. I go down and speak in the Texas Coaches Convention in Austin. And your high school coach listens to the presentation. And she comes up afterwards and says, I have a player that would be great for Nebraska volleyball. And you can imagine at that time, I probably heard things like that a lot. But then I got to see the video, and she did have a player. And then I think I found out that your grandmother was from Nebraska. Is that right? Or
yeah. My dad actually was from Nebraska. My grandparents were still living there, yes.
And that meant that, boy, we might even have a chance. So I came down for the home visit, and you were catatonic during the visit.
I don't think that's true. I was nervous, probably.
All I remember is you were in a recliner and your family had circled you and said, Amber, speak. But it was obvious to me you really wanted to be a Husker. I think we also got you in volleyball camp, and boy, you had the athleticism and the wingspan and everything that led us to believe you were going to be an extraordinary player. One story I'd like to tell, you were so good so quickly that I said to you after a practice, probably a month into the season, I said, Amber, let me know when you want to play.
I remember that. I remember that conversation. I remember
Yeah.
you saying that to me.
And you tactfully waited until when?
Right before the A&M match.
Yeah, which was a good match to choose because
Yes.
your family was going to be there. I'm sure that's one of the
Mhm.
reasons why you wanted to.
I think I said, I'm ready, coach.
You
Let me
did.
in.
Yeah, I was ready about 6 weeks before that, but that's when you.
You're just waiting
I was,
patiently.
yeah, yes, but it was wonderful. Gracia, again, happenstance. It's USAV Nationals, Junior Nationals, and I believe it was in either probably Dallas. But my daughter's playing on a club team, and I see you warming up, and I think, man, who is that kid? And you were playing with a team from Puerto Rico. And, I thought, well, what are our chances here? I mean, she'd have to fly over Florida. Uh, it would be easier for her to do that, to go to Florida, than it would be to come to Lincoln. But you were just too good. And I thought the only chance we have here is that we've got a pretty good reputation with setters. And if she wants to play internationally as a setter, let's go after it. But the person that we really owe a debt of gratitude to is Nikki Best. Nikki visited you in Dorado. She also, your senior years, you were a foreign exchange student in Owings Mill, Maryland. I'd forgotten that. How did that come about?
It was through a basketball club team. It was a coach from Philadelphia who recruited players from different places, the U.S. players or from foreign countries, and he had a club team, and he offered me through a local club team in Puerto Rico. That was the contact. He offered me the opportunity to be on his team, his traveling team. And on that team, I met the teammate whose parents eventually would offer me to stay with them, be my host family, and go to the school where she went to. But it was a boarding school, so I lived at the school. And then on weekends, I would stay with her. She was a basketball player, a really good basketball player. So it
But
was,
as I recall, you were also player of the year in volleyball in Owings Mill.
I maybe.
Oh, there's just so many awards. I can't keep track of them. Well, when you all showed up, it was a remarkable group, and I don't know that it was a very young team, but I don't know that we have ever had the depth that we had that year. And it took us a month to 6 weeks to figure out what system was going to work. Do you remember, John? We lost our first two matches, which
Yep.
had never happened before, to Pacific and
Yep.
Penn State, and they were close matches. But eventually we got it figured out. And initially we thought, well, maybe we'll run a 5-1 with Gracia. But then we saw that Gracia had multiple skills, and probably wasn't as technically far along as Jill and Lindsay Wishmeier. And so we decided to go with a system with two right side players who also had to be on the court all the time. Nobody had ever done this before, but we wanted Nancy on the court, 6 rotations. We wanted Gracia on the court, 6 rotations. And we had 3 really strong middle blockers in Amber, Tanya Tauke, and Jenny Kropp. So John and I struggled with this for about 2 weeks until we both on the same day came up with the same solution. We would run our setters for our middle blockers. But what you couldn't do back then, you could only enter a match 3 times.
Mhm.
So if Amber starts as a middle blocker and comes out, she can go in again, come out, and go in one last time, but that's it. So it meant that the two right side blockers, Gracia and Nancy Metcalf, would slide over and middle block. No one could copy this system because nobody had athletes like Gracia and Nancy that were capable of playing the middle and also playing the right side. The real challenge here for Laura was probably as advanced as any of the freshmen that came in, but she wasn't experienced as either the three middles or as Mandy Monson, Angie Oxley, Kim Behrens. Laura, looking back on it, do you wish we had redshirted you?
Oh, that's a tough question. Yes and no, I guess at the same time. I mean, I would have wanted to go out with my friends and Gracia and Amber and Lindsay, I feel like a little bit, but to have another year, just didn't even cross my mind really about redshirting back then. You know, I didn't really know a lot about it. So no, I don't think I don't regret it.
Yeah.
Unless everybody could come back with me, I guess. If we all could do it one more year, then I would do it.
Yeah. Amber, what other schools came into play? You know, were there other schools you visited?
I visited. I didn't ever go to A&M. Just home visits were a lot bigger. I mean, after going through the recruiting process with my son, home visits seemed like they were the main thing we did, and I had quite a few of those. And really, I wanted to stay in the Big 12. I was a homebody like Laura. I wanted to be, and I ended up going 1,000 miles away. Figure that. But I knew in the Big 12 I would get to see my family at all the Texas away games. And so I wanted to go to the best school in the Big 12. So that was basically my reasoning. I think Texas had some coaching issues at the time when I was being recruited, and I was just a little uneasy about that. A&M would probably have been my other school that I would have chosen, which is fitting to have played my first year played A&M for the first time. So it was pretty neat experience.
Yeah. John, what did you think when you first saw this class, these athletes?
The future is extremely bright. Although it started out a bit discouragingly. The opening match against Pacific was a 5-set marathon. And I remember saying, Lindsay Wishmeier comes from Lewiston, Nebraska, and we got more fans in Section 8 than would live in that entire town. And here she is on national television playing Pacific in a 2-setter offense. And I remember also the end of that match, which Pacific won, their star outside hitter, Elsa Stegman, suffered a very serious injury at the very end. So it was kind of a tough start to the season. But I mean, this is a group that, you know, won 92% of their overall matches in 4 seasons and 96% of their conference matches in those 4 seasons. And just Amber, I mean, you're second all time at Nebraska history attack percentage at 396. No one in the last 15 years has come within 20 points of you. Lauren Stivrins was within, I guess, 18 points of you at 368. Just I don't think I don't think anyone's going to supplant you in the modern era. But I'll tell you a little side story about Amber, and that was I was walking with Jared Elliott, the head coach of Texas, who took over after Amber had already arrived at Nebraska. And we're walking in the hallway of the Coliseum, and the South hallway then had all the All-American photos. And I'm walking with him, and he looks and he sees Amber's photo, and he shakes his head. He goes, "I can't believe Jim Moore let her get out of Texas," his predecessor. He was angry. He had just lost the match to Nebraska. But yeah, that foursome was really something special.
Yeah, I really feel bad for Jarrett.
Yeah, he's had a tough go ever since.
Well, yes, and that first year we start off bumpy, but we go down to a tournament in Florida and beat Florida in their own court. And by the end of that season, we win our last 14 matches, which is, by that point, we're the best team. I think we end up winning the Big 12, even though Texas A&M was a much more experienced team than we were. But I think our talent just caught up, and we beat Texas and Texas A&M at home toward the end of the season. But another player on that team was Katie Yankee, who was critical in some matches, and she came in either in the middle and hit a zero tempo quick, or came in on the right side. And I'm looking at the 16 players on the team. Actually, it's 14. The 14 players in that team all started at one point or another. That's incredible. And then these three are all Americans. Their sophomore year. Amber also at the time was the only player when she graduated who'd led her team in blocks and attack percentage all 4 years. Now, Karen Dahlgren was a right side player her freshman year. John, you would know if anybody else in John Cook's era would have matched that, but that's remarkable. And I think teams that Gracia was the starting setter won like 98% of their matches during her career. That's incredible. I don't think those match up. Laura Pilakowski leads the team in kills in the first national championship. John, what do you remember about that match? That second year, team goes to Notre Dame early in the season.
Yep.
And I'll tell you what, Andy Benikowski, UCLA's coach, goes up to John before the match. He says, "So you're redshirting mentoring?" Yeah, I think he's thinking like, well, that we don't have to be too concerned. And Nancy was a beast. I mean, she in 1999, I'm sure she had over 500 kills. So undoubtedly, Coach Benikowski's thinking, I'm not sure that maybe they'll be competitive against us. What do you remember about that tournament?
That Notre Dame tournament, that there were not a ton of fans there because some of those matches, but there was a big, I think that was the year we also played football at the same time.
Yes.
And so the games were playing a match when the football game's going on. So, and the football stadium was half red. And I think that was the weekend, you guys know a lot better, when you really realized, wow, this could be something special, this team here. But what do I remember about the championship match? The blizzard, because it was a nightmare traveling to Richmond, Virginia, to get there. And, we took planes, trains, automobiles. I mean, we flew into Philly, grabbed a train, and we get there like the day of the match. And the semifinal, the team was already long since there, but the fans and parents and wives, it was a big odyssey, but it was certainly well worth it. That was Nebraska's second national championship, undefeated season.
Yeah, it's odd that Nebraska would win their first two championships in Springfield, Mass. And Richmond, Virginia.
With blizzards, both with blizzards going on.
But neither one at the time were hotbeds for volleyball.
Yeah.
The idea back then was, well, let's take Final Fours and move them around. It went 5 sets.
Mhm.
Gracia, what do you remember about that match?
It's been a while.
What do I remember? Honestly, I don't.
You were the MVP of the
One
match.
thing I remember from watching videos about that match, Amber's game face. That's one thing I do remember. I think during the fifth set, it was, I don't know if it was a close-up on Amber's face. She was so focused and concentrated. Me, I don't remember much, honestly, but I do remember Amber's face. And that's just how, that's Amber's game face. When she is focused up on that net, it was like that. And I really felt comfortable playing around Amber, playing around Laura, and the other teammates. But it was special having Amber next to me up on that net in the front row.
Well, think about what a block it was. Gracia, when you guys graduated, Amber was probably first in solo blocks. You were fourth, and you didn't even play middle blocker. I mean, so what kind of a block is that? Yeah. Nebraska wins the first set, and this is pre-rally score. So sets can go on forever, but Nebraska wins the first set, 15-9. But then Wisconsin comes back and dominates the next 2 sets, 15-9, 15-7. It would be remarkable if any of you remember what Coach Cook said before he went out in that next set.
I think Coach Cook was so nervous playing against his former Wisconsin team. I really don't think he said anything. I really don't think he did. I think it was Craig, and I think that the assistants really took over, because I really think that he was having an inner struggle playing against his former team.
And I do remember this because I was in Richmond for this. The Wisconsin players would not talk to him at the press conference. Every team sits before the press, and this is a team he coached 2 years before. So it's kind of like they felt abandoned, and they were very, very good. Any of these 4 teams could have won the national championship. Hawaii was very good. USC was very good. I thought USC would probably,
Ross. Yeah, they had some great players.
beat Wisconsin. So I wasn't aware of that, Amber, because I wouldn't have known that happened in the huddle. But it wouldn't be surprising, because I think he was conflicted.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. The irony here a little bit is that John's Wisconsin team, we played John's Wisconsin team in 1998 in the regional finals in Lincoln. And he had a team that was a great team then, and we beat them. And it was after the match that I asked if he would come back and be an associate head coach for a year and then take over. So were you aware? Were you aware during that season that he was likely to become the head coach at the end of the year in 1999 when you first came?
Who are you asking?
Any of you?
Laura, why don't you answer that one?
I'll answer that. No, I mean, I don't think we really knew, but you mean before? I think when he came, though, and was an assistant, we kind of had an idea, though, don't you think? I mean,
so.
Gracia didn't have an idea.
Didn't have an idea about many things that were happening around me.
But I mean, when you're going to leave a head job at, a Power 5 then school, you have some inkling that maybe something's going on, but we didn't know anything for sure. You
Well,
guys
yeah,
tell us,
and
but yeah.
well, as this season goes along, the 2000 season, at what point does the team start to have a conversation about we should be thinking about behaviors that lead to a national championship or setting a goal for winning a national championship? Do you recall that happening?
That's always our goal. That
Yeah.
was, I mean, that didn't happen in the middle of the season. That's why we came to Nebraska. So,
Right,
I mean, I never went into a game not thinking I was going to win ever.
right.
And so I think that was part of the reason why I became a Husker, is because that, you're greater than yourself. It's a team. And the expectations were high, then, but I don't think there was ever a time that we didn't think we would win. Our goals were always to win a national championship.
And as we were talking about that Notre Dame tournament and playing UCLA, I do remember Coach Cook talking to us in the locker room, and the way he believed in us and the way he talked to us felt different to me. I felt like he knew there was something in us that we could be great and we could do great things. And I think that gave all of us that much more confidence moving forward. And that was so early in the season, that there was that motivation very early on.
And it's easy to focus on the end result, but you all were part of one of the greatest comebacks in Nebraska volleyball history. I mean, you also averted what would have been one of the greatest upsets in the history of the NCAA tournament when South Carolina in the second round was playing at the Coliseum. They win a deuce game in the third and go up 2-1. And you think, okay, Nebraska's going to figure it out. This undefeated team against this group of unknowns. I remember Callie Plummer on the right side. And it's 12-9 South Carolina in the fourth set. And everyone's just thinking, oh my gosh, it's gone. And Kim Behrens has told me that at that point or soon thereafter, the Coliseum was so loud, you were nose to nose and couldn't hear each other. And it was so definitely like she was like tears, not from like sadness or joy, but just there was just so much emotion were coming down his face. I want, if you can recall, what your recollections are of that late fourth set when you just stole that match back and allowed that undefeated season to continue. Any recollections?
I do remember the Coliseum getting that loud. I do remember that. I also remember being very tired.
Tired.
Yes, for some reason.
General
I was
fatigue.
tired, but you don't think about, I guess at a moment like that, you just focus on what we need to do. What do we need to do now? Of course, many things go through your head like this cannot be it. But at the same time, you just have to focus. And there was one play that I do remember. I think it was the setter kept dumping that second that second pass over, or we couldn't pick it up. But Wishmeier got her last one, I think, and that turned around the game towards the end, if I'm not mistaken. But it was just one of those moments that is just odd, but I do think that the fans just carried us through at the end of that match.
And I think it was a wake-up call for our whole team. And I think another stepping stone in that process to win a national championship that we needed to say, hey, like, this isn't something you have to go take it. It's not something that's going to be handed to you. And so that South Carolina match, along with that locker room talk at UCLA, the beginning of the season, those were critical times for our team moving forward.
Well, Amber, you raise a really important point that I don't think you can accomplish anything great without being tested like that.
Yes.
you know,
I agree
and
completely.
you aren't gonna win them all either, you know. The team you played in the semifinals in Richmond, Hawaii, had two tremendous players that you would meet at the end of your career, Kim Willoughby and John, who was the other outside hitter?
Lily Kalmaker. I'm not good at pronouncing her last name. The first name was Lily.
Lily, yeah.
Yes, yes, and I thought going into that match it could be a toss-up, but actually won it fairly handily and hit 296 and held Hawaii to 134. So after this unbelievable season, your sophomore year, do you even think ahead like what are we capable of doing? Are we capable of just dominating volleyball for the next 2 years? Or does that not occur to a player?
I think it goes along with what Laura was saying, that we expected to, we came to a program that had this expectation to win and to dominate, and so you are in a system that wants that, or that is the goal all the time, and so moving forward, I think that goal continued. I just have to say there's just something really special about that 2000 team that is very difficult to replicate, very difficult to explain sometimes to people that have asked me. And I mean, I'll let Laura and Gracia talk too, but there's, it's just hard to explain that team and that dynamic that I don't think was completely replicated those next 2 years. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, well, I mean, we had great senior leadership with Jill, Angie, and Kim, and everybody just brought something different, and everybody on the team was for the team. We trust each other, even if they weren't playing. Everybody accepted their roles, and you don't find that very often in teams. I mean, I've been around so many teams still with teams right now, you know, and it's just, it takes a special person to be able to do that. And I feel like we had all of us were there not for ourselves, you know, and so, and like Amber said, we expected to win, but like, that wasn't what we thought about all the time. I think John just helped us stay like more in the present and kind of like, okay, this is what we're focused on today, and not so much of down the road either. But we always had in our mind that we wanted to win 2 more national championships. I mean, who doesn't? So
Well, Jill, Angie, and Kim are 3 pretty selfless people.
right.
You know, they would have done anything, played any role that they could have if it helped the team. And Angie, do you remember what her nickname was?
Stealth.
Stealth. She was the stealth player. You'd be watching Laura fly around and Amber fly around, and you'd pick up the stat sheet, and here's this player with 12 kills, 2 aces, great defense, just a really solid player.
Right.
And she and Kim Behrens were glue players. They were, you know, they just held it together. It was really a very remarkable team.
Yeah. I want to say, can I say one thing, Terry?
You can say 2 things.
Okay. You said at the beginning that you felt like our class was the best recruiting class that you had ever had, but I don't think we would have won that national championship without those seniors.
Oh, no.
And what they brought. And so you had a ton of classes recruiting all leading up to that 2000 team that led to that national championship. So I'm flattered that you thought we were this great recruiting class, but a lot more goes into it. And I think that's important for people watching this podcast to see that the development that goes into great teams like that.
Yes, Amber, that's a great clarification, because when I felt at the time that that you played, I felt you had to have good players and two players that could play internationally.
Mm-hmm.
Here we had three players in one class that athletically had the talent to play internationally when they graduated. So that's what I meant. But
Yeah.
the culture was strong, and you know, John hit the ground running because he knew you. He'd coached with you a year. John, what's your?
My point is that I've heard this story about a wheel with ribbons that played a role in the building of the culture and the chemistry of that special undefeated national championship year of 2000. Can you three clarify what we're talking about here with this wheel and ribbons? What was that?
Dreamcatcher, I think.
Yes,
Yeah, it was Diane's idea, wasn't it?
I think so.
I feel like it was Diane's idea for the Dreamcatcher.
And that's Diane Mendenhall, who
Yeah.
was the director of ops.
How did it work? What happened? It never
idea
really
was-
became public knowledge.
I think the idea was to, when those negative thoughts would cross our heads during a match or at any point, to not let them overtake our thinking and the way we would perform on the court. And I think we also, it was not all of us, but some of us did have a piece of string tied on our shoes to remind us of that dream catcher that we had in the locker room. But the idea was to not let the negative thinking, especially when things don't go well on the court, which happens often, to not let that stop us from doing what we could do in order to continue with the match.
Gracia and all of you, does learning that behavior carry with you in situations after your competitive careers are over? Did you ever flash back on that moment?
That specific moment of the dream catcher?
Yeah,
Or-
the idea.
I think that when the dream catcher idea came around, the phrase of staying in the moment or in the present was also mentioned. And that mentality has helped me a lot and in life in general, because the same happens in life. There are moments in life that are not going to go the way that you want, or situations that are unplanned that just flip your life upside down. And taking things a day at a time, staying in the present, actually does help. It helps to stay balanced, to stay focused, and not go crazy because it is easy to go crazy when things aren't going the way you want them to.
That's well said. I think a lot of people would be interested in what you're doing now, what your focus now. Laura, why don't you give us an idea about your family? You're at Nebraska Omaha with your husband. Tell us what you've done since people saw you last at Nebraska Volleyball. You played 1 year of professional ball in Puerto Rico. How did that go?
Really well. I loved playing in Puerto Rico. So I played there in 2004. Well, Gracia and I finished with basketball first off. So, and we won one game. Remember that, Gracia? So we went in. We won.
No, wait, tell us what happened in the one game.
I think I fell out. I don't know.
I don't remember which game it was, but
I don't know. All I tell people is we lost one game that whole year in volleyball. You know, I mean, hardly lost any. You know, and then we go into the Big 12 season, and I mean, I hadn't played basketball in 4 years, and I was a post player.
Why did they ask you to come out then?
Yori's first year, they needed players. I mean, there was tryouts. She had recruited me. This is part of my recruiting story a little bit, is I was better at basketball actually. And just didn't decide that until later. Didn't play club volleyball till my junior year. I mean, I don't know what you said before, but I don't feel like I was ready for Nebraska volleyball at all. I needed a whole year. I was athletically there, but volleyball wise, it was not there. So, so yeah, played basketball, and then Puerto Rico 1 year, and our strength coach, Courtney, was planning on leaving in the next year. And the reason why I became a strength coach, I hadn't lifted ever really. I mean, a little bit here and there in high school, and between my freshman and sophomore year, I knew something had to change. Like, I could have quit not playing at all. And I decided I was going to get in the weight room. Courtney helped me so much. Just focused on the strength, increase my vertical, my speed, and I think adding muscle, that really helps. So that's why I wanted to become a strength coach. And so then John asked me to be a strength coach without any experience. And so I had to decide between playing another year. So it was a hard decision, but I knew long term, I wasn't going to play for very long. I wanted a family too. And so, best decision though, and I'm still a strength coach. So, just really owe a lot to John for believing in me that I could do the job, and, just still be able to help others, what Courtney helped me be able to do in volleyball. So, go ahead.
The key there, I think, is John wasn't put off by the fact you didn't have the skills. He saw a person with character and talent that could learn the skills, the type of person he wanted in his program. So now you're the strength coach for Nebraska Omaha, and I don't know how many teams there, but also for the Omaha Supernovas in the Professional Volleyball Federation.
Yep, correct. So, yep. So my husband, Matt, so we moved to Omaha in 2019. So after I was a strength coach, I think 8 seasons at Nebraska, we were at Hastings College. Both my daughters, so I have 2 daughters, Lainey is 9 and Emmy is 11. So they were both born in Hastings, and I was just part-time strength coach there. And then, but Omaha, Nebraska, Omaha, just do volleyball for them. And then, so I'm part-time, and then part-time with the Supernovas. So it's worked out great. I don't have to travel. I can still be at all my kids' activities, especially with Matt, being a head coach and traveling and all the responsibilities there. So I feel very blessed, and just thankful that I'm able to do both. So
yeah. Amber, speaking of kids, one of your kids won the state championship yesterday in
Yes.
wrestling duels in Iowa. So you never played, you didn't leave and play professional volleyball. Tell us about
No.
your journey.
Well, for me, Jack's just pulling in right now. You might get to see him if he comes in. For me, I started dating my husband the first day of class our freshman year at Nebraska, and we dated all through college, and were engaged at Love Library there on campus, and got married, and started our lives. And volleyball, and I had talked to you about this, Terry, but volleyball for me, I had a goal always to play college volleyball. But where my life was at the end of that journey of college volleyball, I saw that my life with Jay and starting a family was more important than volleyball. And so we have 4 kids, 2 boys, 2 girls. My oldest is a senior in high school, so we've got all the senior things going on right now. And he's 18, 16-year-old boy. 14-year-old girl and 10-year-old girl that's just walking in. So my life is very busy right now, full of lots of activities and everything, and a state championship last night. So that's Jack. Come introduce yourself to everybody. Just come down here.
Now, hello, Jack. What weight class were you in yesterday?
285.
Well, that pretty much takes in everybody then. There's nothing above that, right?
Yeah, no, I'm a lot lighter than some of the 285 guys. So
He's 225 soaking wet, wrestling against guys 60 pounds heavier than him, and he's just really enjoyed wrestling season this year. So,
What high school?
Algona. So yeah,
Home of the Fighting
Bulldogs.
They actually just got back from the state. Our town was doing a celebration for the wrestling, so they all were at the high school gym, and he was probably signing autographs, and that's where they're just coming back from.
You missed that for this podcast?
Well, I already made you guys reschedule.
Your
And
dedication
I had
to
a
Husker
friend.
volleyball.
I texted a friend this morning and said, just take lots of pictures and videos and send them to me. So I have reinforcements. But yes, I missed it to talk with you guys.
And Jack's going to, is it Iowa State next year?
Iowa State. He's a defensive end. So Coach Cook always joked about how he wanted to be a linebackers coach. So I could have a linebacker if that's what they choose to move him to. But he's he's the guy on the end of the line that goes and sacks the quarterback. That's his job. So that's my life in a nutshell.
That's
right now.
Greicha, tell us about, you left Nebraska. I know you played a couple years in Puerto Rico, but you also were involved with the national team. How long were you involved with the national team? And
I trained with them for the 2004 cycle, and I made it to the last cut. After that, that was my last year training with the national team. And then I went, I'm not quite sure about the chronology here, but I ended up back in Nebraska to finish school. And that's when I met my husband. We got married in 2006. And after that, my life took a very unexpected turn. We moved to Central America because he's from Nicaragua. And we lived there for about 13 years in total. And I don't regret that decision. It was a life experience. I love cultures. One of my fondest memories from Nebraska volleyball was our trip to China. And I think one thing that I wanted to mention that I'm so grateful about being in the program those years was how it prepared me, I think, for living in environments that are completely different from what I'm used to. Because coming from Puerto Rico, even though I had lived in Maryland for a year, I didn't feel a culture shock when I was in Maryland as I felt when I went to Nebraska. For some reason, it wasn't bad. It was just a shock. Many things were just very different. And but I did learn in Nebraska that when you open up to people will welcome you. And I am so grateful that that was my experience in Nebraska. And I took that, and when I took that experience and I learned it, when I went to Nicaragua, I did the same thing. And I had it wasn't easy, just like being in Nebraska was not easy either. Not bad. It was just, you go through challenges. But it did prepare me to live in a different country with different cultures, even though it is a Spanish-speaking country, but it's a very different system from what I had grown up with and what I had experienced living in the US. But it didn't feel like the transition wasn't as difficult because I had already been through it when I was in Nebraska. And I'm so grateful for the people of Nebraska and the fans because I did feel welcome. I never felt out of place.
Gracia, what's your husband's name?
Pablo.
John, do you want to say that? So
I'm going to let you go ahead.
It's Pablo with the American
oh, I
accent.
thought you said Barbaro. Pablo.
Pablo.
Okay. Gracia, I remember your first week on campus and you're cutting across campus. And I said, Gracia, after 1 week, what's your favorite course? And you said Japanese. And I said, Gracia, your language is Spanish. You're in a culture where you need to speak English and as an elective, you choose Japanese. But after getting to know you, it wasn't a surprise because you were an exceptional student. And tell us what Gracia means and why your father named you Gracia.
My father is a big sports fan. He is truly a sports fan. He watches any sport, anytime. That's just what he loves. And because in Spanish, Grecia is Greece, where the Olympic Games originated, he wanted to name me Grecia after the country. And then my mom and him decided to change it to Gracia, but with the idea of Greece.
Right.
And then when my mom went to describe me, she added the "ly" to make it sound more girly, she said.
Well, the three of you I don't know that I knew this until I started doing a little research, but the three of you were co-Big 12 Players of the Year your senior season. I don't know that that's ever happened. Were you aware of that? Evidently, they didn't give you the hardware, but that's pretty remarkable. You've had a tremendous impact on Nebraska volleyball, and I wish Lindsay was here because she did it as well. And the four of you were just wonderful. I really want to thank you for being on here today, and John as well. I also want to thank. Yes, John, go ahead.
I'll just say quickly, I mean, for you to step away, Terry, with this talent waiting, it was pretty selfless on your part. And I think you've said publicly many times, one reason you left that year when you were still in your 50s was that you felt any more time and it would have been difficult to get John Cook as your successor. That was pretty remarkable on your part to put the program so far ahead of your own interests when, you know, Coach Cook went 67-0 in his first 67 Big 12 matches. There was a lot of talent that you left behind. So big kudos to you. And it was just a joy to watch you three and Lindsay for those 4 years.
Well, thank you, John. You ladies wouldn't have known it, but when I was coaching you that year, I would go home and grieve because you were such wonderful people that, you know, but you can't base decisions just on, you know, there were many factors that came into it. And I should give you this opportunity. This last week, Coach Cook decided to retire. Danny Busboom became the next head coach. If you wanted to say something to Coach Cook, what would you say? Laura, let's begin with you.
Okay. Well, I already texted him this, but just so very thankful for everything he's done for all sports. I mean, everybody's, if you've watched anything, it's just amazing the impact that he's had on so many women, and not just in our program, but and also just thank him personally for believing in me, and not only as a player to move me to outside and believe that I could be in that role, but also, like I said before, to be a strength coach because I wouldn't be here today. So I just want to thank John and just good luck with new adventures and grandkids. And I mean, I totally understand being a coach's wife, so the balance is difficult. So just thank you.
Gracia?
What I would like to thank him for during the time that I was on the team for taking us on trips, especially to that trip to China. That was very unique. And because I love cultures, that just inspired me in other ways as well. And I wish him the best with now this next chapter in life.
Amber?
Well, I also texted him this already and have talked to him, but I thanked him for the man that he is, and that he was the kind of coach that just you knew cared about you, and you were as well, Coach Pettit. But I think that he was genuine, and I've always told my kids and told them, just be your authentic self. Don't be different around your teacher than you are around anyone else. And so that's what really important to me, just to be authentic and genuine. And I felt that Coach Cook was that way. And as I was thinking about home visits when we were talking earlier, Coach Cook sat on my couch as well as you and recruited me to go to Wisconsin. And my dad, as Coach Cook left, I remember my dad saying, "You need to go to Wisconsin. Coach Cook he is a great." I said, "Dad, they're in the Big Ten. I would never see you. I'm not going to go to Wisconsin." And just amazing how the Lord works all that out. And I was at Nebraska, and then my dad got the coach that he wanted me to have too. So it's just a really neat thing for me to remember. Just about I got kind of the best of both, Nebraska and the coach that my dad wanted.
That's a sweet story, Amber. Gracia, one thing we didn't mention is that in Lakeland, you teach English as a second language. That's correct. And when you were in Nicaragua, you were teaching English to kids in China. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes, I worked with a Chinese company based here in the US, but the platform is set up to teach Chinese students, especially younger Chinese students. And because of the time difference, I would start my first session at 2 o'clock in the morning or 2:30 in the morning, having to be my best self and happy and joyful and hi. But it was a great experience. That's what I've been doing since I moved to Nicaragua, teach English to students from all ages, actually, but mainly younger students. And it brings me a lot of joy because I get to interact culturally and also help them to fulfill their dreams with the language, and also get to know families from different parts of the world. Some of those parents want to have contact with me, and you just get to know people's experiences. And I think that to me, that's very fulfilling and it's wonderful. And now that I do it in high school, because the school that I teach at is also becoming a high school, I feel lucky that I get to have the world come to me every day in my classroom.
Wow.
And I get to teach them not only the language, but also how to navigate being in the US and the American culture.
Well, I think anyone listening to this can see that we have some pretty special people in this on this podcast. You know, the three of you could get Lindsay and grab Kim Behrens and maybe Nancy Metcalf and go win 40 and over USAV nationals.
Oh, no. My jumping days are over. You
Amber,
have
you
4 kids and lots of things change. We'll just leave it at that.
Amber, you wouldn't have to jump. You could still just stand
That's
there. and
true. Oh goodness.
Well, thanks so much for being on here. John, thank you, and thank Humanex Ventures. Because if they didn't support us, we couldn't do this. And you guys are wonderful. You're all servant leaders, and I appreciate you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Terry.
That was great.
Well, why wouldn't it be?
It was just fun listening. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, it was great. And
I was gonna tell the story when we went to that club in China.
Yes, John.
John,
They blindfolded you. Do you remember that?
That's
And said
right.
they were throwing knives at you.
Yeah, and I thought they were throwing knives at me, and I was
Yes.
petrified. I thought this was it. I didn't have my will in order.
tell this story, and maybe and David record it. And we'll find a way to.
Oh, I haven't stopped.
All
She
right.
laughed.
So
She fell over. She fell over laughing.
we're at this show, kind of a magic show, but it's an arena in Shanghai. And these two guys come out with knives and they're throwing knives around and everything. And then they go into the audience and I'm sitting in the front row and they're looking for volunteers. I definitely did not volunteer. They grabbed me.
I think we volunteered you.
Yeah, I think all of us
The thing was
volunteered.
like, hey, if you want a member from our group who's not that important, like go get he grabs me and everyone's like cheering. I'm like, what the? And then anyway, he blindfolds me, puts me up against a wall. And prior to that, had been throwing these knives. I'm like, this is it. Like I'm in China. They don't have a lot of laws against this around here. I don't know how, whom do we sue here? So my family can get a little money, after it's all over. And all of a sudden I hear, okay, you ready? And then whoosh, and then another one, whoosh, and then whoosh. And what he was doing was faking, and then I was blindfolded, and he was like stabbing right near my head, these knives, then right between my legs. And then he took the blindfold off, and I saw these knives, and everyone was laughing. I'm like, well, it might be a joke to you, but this I had no idea. And nobody told me on the bus ride home, and we had a Husker Vision guy with me, and we go into his hotel room, and he shows the video and how they're going like this to the crowd, and then he's just walking up and stabbing right next to my head. It's a great gig because they totally had me fooled. The other thing, in 2000 in China was primitive, right? And all the players, especially Amber, had like this much of their feet sticking out over the end of their beds in the hotels. I mean, the difference between the 3 China tips I took, 2006 and 2010, was just a great picture of the evolution of that country. Because in 2000, I mean, we were going out to meals, and it was just like raw cooked like rodents that were being passed around. No one would spot.
Pigeons.
And we
Like,
did
small town.
a college
It was a
student once, I
best.
think. Did
So when
I
Gracia
think so.
says thank you for exposing me to all cultures, Coach Cook, like she means it literally. We were totally exposed. I remember Lindsay wouldn't touch any food. I think she dropped like 15 pounds that whole trip. And there was the camera too that they confiscated at the airport. And Coach Cook gets Congressman B. Ryder's office involved, and it's a doggone international incident as we're trying to like get this Husker Vision camera back. And then 2 days later, this van dumps all of the camera equipment out on the sidewalk in Beijing, right outside our hotel. So I like to say at that moment it was Nebraska Volleyball 1, Chinese People's Republic of China 0.
That's wonderful. So did you have to change your pants when you got back to the hotel, John?
I may have. All I know, I genuinely was fooled. And I thought, in another country, you're thinking, come on, this wouldn't happen. But China, back in 2000, I mean, we had rickshaws that people were pulling through the streets, and And we were sleeping in hotels on this skinny mattress with wood. I mean, this was wild. This was a wild east. And
Well,
so
I'm sure that there were bigger beds available, but John decided to make it as difficult as possible.
I remember one of the first nights, I think Lindsay and I were rooming together, and we just cried. We just sat on the bed and cried. That's what I remember.
The other thing I remember about that trip is there were these internet cafes back then. And that was our only connection to anything, with these internet cafes. And every time we'd go in there, I was kind of the chaperone with all these, these large American women who were drawing a lot of eyeballs from the crowds of native Chinese. And Amber would be on that computer, and I'd walk behind her, and it was these letters to Jay. They spent more time typing letters to this guy, and I'm thinking we had this amazing cultural experience. And there's something else.
That's what happens when you're in love, John. You just
it's a beautiful thing. So that was
I think we'll share this as bonus
footage. Man, we're gonna get the bonus footage episode.
How crazy.
Well, Greicha, it's wonderful to see you. I hope you can accept. I think Amber and Laura are comfortable with being former Nebraska stars. You have to accept the fact you're a legend in the state of Nebraska.
I have never thought of myself like that anywhere, like even in Puerto Rico. It's just, I don't know.
Well, you guys are wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you for doing this, Terry. Awesome.
Inside the Coaching Mind is presented by Humanex Ventures and is pleased to be a part of the Learfield Varsity Podcast Network. If you're on Facebook, look for the Inside the Coaching Mind group and join a vibrant discussion of volleyball and leadership. TerryPettit.com is where you'll find Terry's books, writings, and downloads, as well as subscription links for all your podcast apps.